Hello, beautiful people. Michelle here from Soulshine Yoga and Reiki, as well as Crystal Gray's, one of Crystal Gray's 500-hour babies. And we have the beginning yoga group, and the question came up about lower back pain, and yoga has so many benefits. And of course, yes, addressing lower back pain can be one. That said, of course, investigate, do you have an injury? Is there a reason? Is something wrong that you have back pain? Always, talk to your doctor, all that stuff. That said, I'm a believer in yoga, and also have dealt with a lot of lower back pain myself. I was in a car accident when I was young, which originally began what I thought was a hip issue. And then, you go to the chiropractor and you do the things and you're okay. And then maybe it flares up and, you do more things. But what I've realized that if I can stay faithful within my practice and keep certain muscles strong and other muscles lengthened and stretched, that it can be a big contributor to me not having lower back pain. So what I learned really in my 200-hour training was about my Psoas, Psoas, Psoas. And sometimes like, oh, my Psoas. And so these are muscle that are in your abdominal area, and they actually go from the inner part of the leg up into the diaphragm. And when they're tight, they can do a lot of things. They can affect how well you can expand your ribs for breath. It's a whole rabbit hole that I would encourage you, if you think this is something you might be dealing with, to kind of investigate and learn about. But the psoas hook in the front and the back. And when they're tight, they can contribute to a lot of lower back tightness and pain, stiffness. Of course, there's always the sacrum and all those kinds of things that play into effect, and they're all so interconnected. So for me, when I was going through my 200-hour training, I was feeling like I was having an issue with my hip that I hadn't had for a long time, but over my life comes and goes. And after talking with my teacher, she really of course, we learned about the different muscles, and psoas came up. And so, it kind of like rung a bell and kind of resonated. And so after talking with her, there is some things that she advised that I do. I don't do them all the time, but when I have a problem, I will go to them. I try to eliminate the problem with prevention by, keeping up with certain practices regularly, so that maybe I don't find myself in that crisis mode of so much pain. That said, there's a lot of reasons. Like I said, you can have pain, and if it's an injury, of course, always be aware, be careful, be mindful if you're new to the practice or been away from your practice. There's a couple poses I do want to focus on, but I did want to maybe just introduce a couple little things along the way as we get to those poses, as far as things that I like to incorporate in my life and my classes. It's kind of like, believe it if you need it. If you don't, just pass it on. And, I am an advocate for giving it a try and experimenting in your own body. So these things that I'm bringing to you are the things that have worked for me personally in my life. A lot of times it's hard for people to get up and down from the floor. It's a challenge. So, there's a lot of these things we could do in a chair or maybe on your bed. But for now, I'm just going to, incorporate this as if it was a regular kind of a floor practice, or of course laying down. There are things that work for a lot of people in their, lower back pain that really don't help me, or maybe depending where I am in the journey of tightness and inflammation, what works better. So that said, if something doesn't work for you, there's always other things to try. Like I said, these are the things that work for me. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just say, the first thing I wanted to show you was laying on your back. And so hopefully you can still see me. And so as you come into your back, you always want to still have nice alignment, long spine, rooted hips and shoulders. But something that's really nice is if you lift your knees up relatively, maybe above your hips, keeping the sacrum drawn into the mat though, so that you're not creating that arch and the back is still protected. And then just, rock to the right and then cross through center back to the left. And if it looks like I'm going a different way, things get flipped on Facebook and camera. So just swing, from one side to the other. You can do it as slow as you want, but mindful, keeping the sacrum, down. We don't want to create that arch in the back as we do this. So this is something that's really nice to massage your own lower back. Along the lines of this, a nice rotation, like if you bring the knees in a little bit, rotate over to the right and around. This can be nice. I like to engage the abdominals though, so that like nothing's just left hanging out. And usually if the rotation doesn't work for you, the side to side does. Usually people prefer one or the other, but they're both nice. So that's one thing that you can do, just to kind of rub your own back. On staying on your back, the first thing, I do want to show you a different kind of pigeon, but for now, especially like if you're in your bed or this is one of my favorite hip openers, which can just release tension, create a little bit of spaciousness in the back and sacrum area. So as you're rooted in to your mat, your knees are tracking with your hips and bent above your ankles. And then on an exhale, bring in the right knee in towards the torso, and then pivoting that ankle towards the left knee. Mindful not to put the ankle on the knee, never stack a joint on a joint, so just above the ankle, below the knee. So depending where you are on your flexibility, this might be getting you enough of a hip stretch that you're good, but if you want more on another exhale, lifting the other knee in towards the torso. And you'll begin to feel the outer side of that hip really get to stretch. Mindful, don't push too far. Just when you find that point of sensation, just start breathing into it. On the inhales, create spaciousness. Exhales, just release tension. And so you're just going to hold it here and breathe. That's how I like to do it. There's a lot of ways you can, you could do more of like a scissoring of the muscle. But I just prefer the hatha style of holding and just really, feeling into that tension, finding that, kind of edge of the tension, and then maybe like holding, breathing, and above all, giving myself permission to soften. Because unless it's like an injury, we're really holding our own tension. And then of course, mindfully feet back to the mat and always reverse or switch out to the other side. And then it's a great time to also notice like the difference between the two sides. Where is your tension really at? So this is what I call a reclined pigeon. And if you really need more from here, you can thread your hands through the triangle on the outside, clasping the shin or under the thigh. Again, never like right on the knee. And if you want to have active feet pushing through the heel, the ball of the foot, I like to fan the toes apart. Anything we do for our feet is just good for us. So that's the reclined pigeon. We will later get into a different pigeon. So that was a little bit of something you can do on your back. And then as we come into what would be called a tabletop position, wrists are under shoulders, knees are under hips, your back is nice and extended, toes can be tucked or untucked. And this is just good for so many things. And I think, just replenishing the fluids to the spine can really benefit so much. But of course, that ease of pain in your back. And so just to go through a cat-cow, a lot of us know it, but as we're in this stable table, our gaze is towards the mat, and on the inhale, the tailbone and the face will move upward. And then on the exhale, the face and the tailbone move downward. On the inhale, the belly button moves towards the mat. And the exhale, the belly button moves away. I'm going to do a few more as I talk here. I like to link the movement to the breath. So the inhale, that movement is lasting the whole inhale. And the exhale, the movement is lasting the whole exhale. The thing I like to emphasize about the cat-cows and low back pain is not rushing them and really allowing the low part of the back to find the full stretch. I think a lot of times when we rush it, it's just not always allowing us to, get to the depth of the stretch, wringing out the muscles of a sense of old and just allowing the new to, rush in, whether it's blood flow, oxygen. And so, this is something that I do in almost every practice, whether it's a personal practice or a class. But so that said, that's the cat-cows. And of course, always be aware, be careful. You can do those in a chair if your knee is, I'm 52 and my knees prefer a chair practice sometimes. Okay, so that said, there's a couple of ways that we can get into the next couple of poses. I'm going to start from table and I'm going to show you them, and then I'll take you from what is called a down dog into them, which is probably most traditionally how you'd get into them in a class. Maybe we'll move into them from standing too. So, but for explaining, we'll just start right here. So from this tabletop position, bringing your left leg to the outside of your left hand. And you're going to have a little bit of external movement in the toes so that there is that like pivot out a little bit of the toes. And from here, really finding that stability in the hands and beginning to bring the extended leg or the right leg back. So from here, I'm going to stop right here. This is what I would call a lizard or a modification of a lizard. So the muscle that is being stretched right now, predominantly for me, is my psoas, which is, again, I'm going to remind you so that if you're doing it with me, you'll feel it, right in here. This also goes in and hooks on the backside. And so I think that's partly how it can cause the pain. But when this is tight, it's often tight from sitting. And so then it just makes that extension a lot harder because it's tight, it's swollen probably, or mine often gets that way. Okay, so I'm going to do lizard on the other side because you always want to be even. But so from table, this time I'm going to take the right foot out. The toes are slightly externally rotated. And again, I'm going to walk that back leg back. So I showed you this before and the leg was up. And if you're doing this, you should be feeling that nice lengthening of the psoas. You don't want to push too far. If this isn't something you do, normally hold it for a few breaths. But if this is something you're having lower back pain, you may want to do it for a few breaths every night. Work up to 5, work up to 10, and see if it doesn't start to eliminate that, doing it like before you go to bed. You can also do this with your knee down, toes untucked. You will see some people, if they're really flexible, come down onto their forearms. But the other option is, depending, as you work through it and you want to play, I'm a fan of props and blocks and pillows and chairs. But so you really want to be having that little bit of forward movement to where you're getting that stretch. And you can feel this leg, moving forward. And then just breathe. If you're tight, it's okay to release the tension. Unless you have an injury, it's often something we do to ourselves. And again, if you wanted to play, depending where you are in your practice, again, blocks can really help you kind of find that bit of deeper expression. So that was a lizard. So the next one that I'm going to show you is a pigeon, but it's not, you know, like the reclined, like I do the reclined pigeon. It's also something that I do almost every day or in every practice. So pigeon is very similar to lizard, but if you had to pick one or the other and you think it's your psoas, I would go with the lizard, but the pigeon is really good for opening up the hips. So normally I wouldn't take you in from table, but just for explanation, taking the left knee towards the left wrist, and then you're going to pivot that ankle over towards the right wrist, and using your toes on the back leg, you can begin to walk that leg back. You don't ever want to pull forward. I'm going to move forward. I can see. I'm not all the way in the screen. So if you need to go further, you walk the back leg back. Of course, you do want to keep your hips, you know, square. Sometimes people would like a block, depending. You could do that. But so for right now, some people do practice this, the shin is parallel to the front, but I mean, if you're getting the stretch, you are where you need to be. So this could be perfectly enough. On the extended leg, you'll be able to feel the psoas lengthening. And on the bent leg, you'll feel that hip, those hip flexors and the hip muscles really loosening up, hopefully. And again, this is one where it's nice to play with blocks. You'll see some people will want to come all the way down, which is a really nice modification, especially if you're loose enough to just like really just enjoy it and kind of like let that lengthen up while you're there. But it's also a really nice place, again, you know, if you have blocks and you want to just begin the folding process, maybe you're not all the way there. So again, you know, always do each side. So I'm going to take us out of this back into table, and we're going to switch it out. This time the right knee is going to move towards the right wrist, and that right ankle moves towards the left. Again, walking the back leg back, not pulling on the front. And again, that just, it might be enough, perfect right there. Again, the blocks can be a great place to, you know, work yourself down. And mindful wherever you are when you're doing it, to just remember to breathe. That's the most important part. Inhale, spaciousness. Notice, where does your body expand? And then exhale, tension. Just blow it out, let it go. Inhaling ease. Exhaling tension. Okay. So then, of course, mindfully as you transition, of course, if we were in a class, I would, you know, we would all be doing this a little more gracefully, but I wanted to really explain what was happening for those of you that did ask questions. Emily, this is for you. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just go through the pigeon and the lizard from down dog. And then I hope that you've learned something from this, and that it helps you. So coming into down dog from table. And so, yes, I'm in the screen still. So finding that nice long line from your hips to your wrists. This is another place where I really like to release lower back tension. Kind of reverses the flow of gravity. And it's a great place to kind of just like move your hips. Okay, so from down dog, we're going to go ahead and we're going to bring that right knee towards the right wrist. That right ankle moves towards the left. Bringing that left leg back and finding our pigeon. And wherever you are is perfect, either breathing here or choosing to come down to your own degree. And just keep breathing. One more full breath. So as we want to come out of it, we're going to plant our hands and use our toes to kind of move that back knee forward enough that we can lift back up into down dog. So from that nice long line from your hips to your wrists, we're going to switch it out. This time the left knee is going to move towards the left wrist and that left ankle towards the right. That right foot and knee and leg comes back. Untucking the toe if that's comfortable for you. And so here you are in pigeon. This might be enough, but if you want to fold deeper a little bit, you can. There's all kinds of modifications that you'll see. A lot of times, like you'll see the king pigeon where people come all the way up. So it's just what do you need? Where are you getting that good stretch in the psoas? So it's also about awareness and, of course, not hurting yourself anymore and, finding the balance between too much and not enough. Well, one more breath here. And again, after the hands are planted firmly, using that back foot just to come up a little bit and find your way back into down dog. Okay, so from that nice long line from your wrists to your hips and down dog, we're going to move into lizard. So we're going to go ahead slightly bending the knees. That right foot is going to move to the outside of the right hand. And you can adjust. And then that left leg, you can come down onto your knee and begin to use your toes to work yourself back. And this might be enough. This might be perfect. It's what are you looking for? Are you looking to feel better? Then all you really need is to find that stretch, that lengthen, that's going to allow you to kind of create a balance. And so breathing here in lizard, again, if you need more, there's modifications, or you can always lift that foot up. So again, now just another breath or two, depending on your breath. And when you're ready, we're going to step back up into down dog. And, take a breath if you want, walk it out a little bit. And we're going to go ahead and switch it out. So this time the left foot's coming to the outside of the left hand, finding that slight external movement in the toes, and then walking that back leg back, coming down onto the knee. And hopefully you are feeling it wherever you are. Again, the back knee doesn't have to come down. You can come down onto your forearms. Wherever you are is perfect. Another breath or two. And then mindful, really pushing through the hands and using the back toes to lift yourself up and back into down dog. Have one more breath here. And then mindfully bringing the knees to the mat, bringing the heels towards each other. The knees will come out wide and gently push back into child's pose. I'm going to stack my hands so that I can just have clear breath and talk a little bit for a minute before I leave. This is called child's pose. Sometimes, this does offer a lot of relief for people. This pose in particular for me, depending where I am in the tight, journey, isn't my most relief pose. And that's where it's just important to really experiment in your body. And I think that yoga to me really is the ultimate conversation with your body. And if you listen, it'll tell you what it needs. And I'm always all for learning and just blessings on your journey of having a pain-free life of ease. And I think that yoga is a great way to cultivate that and find things that are, things that we can control. You can come up anytime you want back into an easy seat. it kind of like it brings the control back to you a little bit. And you know, there's times that you might need an anti-inflammatory or, you know, something along those lines. You know, they all are very important things, but I think for me, you know, when we use practices like yoga in the terms of preventative, I think that, you know, it's just a really, really powerful thing, you know, because you can access your breath to the movement to just the awareness in your own body is so much of the healing. And I think that yoga is a great way to kind of bring awareness back into the body. That said, I'm sure this was far longer than any of us thought it would be, but I always enjoy sharing, and I would love to hear if you have any comments or what did work, what didn't work. Like I said, every body type and body is different, so different things work. So there's no real right, there's no real wrong. Yeah, and I guess why I'm here, I should just maybe just give a moment shout out if I know that there's some teacher trainings coming up, and you know, there's not a better way to really learn about yoga, I think, than actually a training. You know, one of my teachers says, you know, if you want to really master something, teach it. And so I don't know if we ever really master anything, but I've sure learned a lot teaching, and the benefits are just really beyond expression. And I think the greatest part of any teacher training is the personal journey that you embark on, and the growth in every area of your life is just wonderful. Namaste, dear ones.